Hello everyone and welcome to the Aikicast. I'm Sewell, longtime Aikido practitioner. I'm obviously doing some other things now. You may have seen me on the other ones, but we have a treat for you today. This is all Aikido all the time. We have my man, who's like my big brother, Roderick Johnson sensei. We're at Philadelphia Aikikai. He taught a phenomenal class. And today we're going to talk to him about his experience as an instructor and trials and tribulations and kind of what inspired him to get into the art of Aikido. What's going on, boss? How you doing?
Great. Nice to see you. It's cold out there, but nice to see you came out.
Yeah, almost frozen. It's like 40-mile-an-hour winds out there.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah. It's good to see you.
So I actually came in on a good day. Thanks for doing this in short notice. I love the class. Thanks for throwing in we'll put some video up so folks can see.
Okay.
I haven't seen you in a while. I haven't seen your Aikido in a while, and since I was just watching, I kind of had like study goggles on.
Okay.
And I saw some really cool things in your Aikido. So I guess if you can just start from the beginning, like what got you into Aikido and all that, and we can kind of just take it from there.
From the very beginning, I was fascinated, like a lot of kids who were growing up in the 70s and 80s, I was fascinated with like the Shaw Brothers stuff that was coming out of China, a lot of the black exploitation films, a lot of them. So it was, a lot of martial arts were circulating in the neighborhood and on film, and so I wanted to get into it. I came to Philly in the late 90s. And to go to grad school.
Nice.
And then after I graduated, I started training with Henry Smith Sensei.
Nice, rest in peace. The man. Yeah. Okay. So we all had goals, different goals in Aikido. Was yours interest just like self-defense, or you just martial arts were cool like most people and you just got into it and said this is the one, right? Because Aikido is like a very specific martial art, right? Like I felt like it's always, for me it was word of mouth, and it's always been word of mouth just because it wasn't like movie. I mean, obviously Steven Seagal had his run, which was definitely a big help back in like the 80s, 90s, which got my dad into it, which got me into it again. But like for you, was it self-defense? Was it martial arts are cool, I just want to do it, or?
I think it was martial arts and more an emphasis on the beauty of it and the more artistic side of it. You know, I played football in high school and college, so I was really, like Henry Smith Sensei, he played football in high school and college. He was athletic, so he had no problem with physicality. But it was also, I was just drawn to the beauty of it, the grace of it, and doing something different.
Yeah, and for me, to piggyback off of that, like what got me in the Aikido was the dynamic movement. Obviously, people would joke like, oh, it's a dance. And I always say Aikido's a deadly dance, right? Whatever, there's something for everyone. But the ukemi, the falling and how the technique turns into like a conversation, a beautiful conversation. And if you're both speaking the same language, I think it's an excellent demonstration, and I'll use that term. I'll explain a little more why. So like when you started, did you have like the goal of becoming an instructor? Because you have a very like unique path on how you became, the figurehead at Aikikai of Philadelphia.
No, absolutely not. I was one of the guys who would just come in. I was constantly coming in late. I was not, like they say, the most likely to succeed. That wasn't me. Henry Smith was, he was in his 60s. He died unexpectedly. So there was never a thought of becoming an instructor. The only, someone had to take over when he passed away.
Right.
And so, so just so happens at the same time, Ed, who was the Fukushida one, had a stroke.
Oh, that's right. I didn't realize how close together that
and
was.
Some of the older teachers had left. Some of the older instructors. So you become nominated by committee.
Right.
So and Henry passed like 12, 13 years ago.
Man, it seems like just yesterday. Because I remember coming back. Because I was training at A Street with late Donovan Waite Sensei. I remember coming back just to check in, because I remember he knew, because I went to call him, he was like, I already know. And I was like, how did you, like, do the loop? And he was like, hey, he's like, are you going to go check on your boys? I was like, yeah. He was like, do you want me to go? I was like, I mean, probably. And then when you did the seminar later with Yamada Sensei as like the memorial, I thought that was beautiful. And he was going regardless, which was really cool. I can come back to that.
Yeah.
All right, so you didn't have goals to become an instructor, but like, how did that change your Aikido, right? Because one day you're like, oh, I'm training, I love this thing. Now it's like, what happens? Like, I'm teaching, but like, what happens now, like carrying this thing? Like, did you did you have like a roadmap, or were you like, we're going to expand and have like this beautiful space and environment we have now, or was it just...
it becomes almost like an apprenticeship, right? So you still have, at that time, you still have Yamada Sensei still alive.
True.
At that time, Herb Fowl Sensei is still alive. So you still have teachers who are still teaching you, because you've been a sensei all of 15 minutes. You know,
true.
you're doing the job, but it's just like, you know, that when you bring that baby home that first night, you're a parent.
Yeah.
You have parental responsibility, but you have like 1 day of experience.
Yes.
And so you have to accumulate.
Yeah.
You have to accumulate your experiences and grow in it, and grow into the role and learn on the job.
Yeah, I think obviously your environment speaks to yourself. We'll put video up so people can see the culture here. I find it interesting in such a beautiful way. It warms my heart every time I come here. I always felt like, you know, where I started is home. You always go back home. After his passing, even now popping in, like, I'm like, okay, let me go see the crew. Let me go see the boys. Let me go see, like, family. What you've done to the space, the vibe you kept here, like, I feel the essence and the original vibe, but I also feel like what you've offered, like your character being kind of expressed to your students, and it's kind of beautiful to see how things have, I would say, like, evolved a bit, right? Because it kind of has to, right? Things change, times change, you know, regimes change, but I think it's still carrying on what I think, you know, Sensei would be proud of today if he walked in and we found out he was like, oh, I was on vacation, kind of dodged some taxes, right?
Yeah, but you have to be sincere too, because and you can't try to be someone else. Like, you can't try to be. I can't try to match the charisma of Henry Smith Sensei. You know, I have to bring myself and my kind of discipline and my nature into what I'm doing, but with the same sincerity. You know, it's not, you can't imitate someone. You just like, okay, I'm going to honor you by doing the best I can. This is my personality. This is my ability. I'm going to put forth 100%, but you can't really imitate.
Can we dive into that? No discredit to anyone, because I think some instructors, I'll say styles because that's probably the best term. Some instructors, some systems will use, like, you know, imitation is the best form of flattery. That's how you learn. And at some point, there should be a window or space for you to create your own flair, your own color to whatever the technique is. Now, I know some places don't allow that sort of freedom. I think we were a little unique. Even my path training with Donovan, like, he didn't expect me to be him, and neither did Smith Sensei when I started. So for you, how much did that have an kind of effect on how your Aikido has grown? Because you have so many ways you can go, right? But, like, I guess you have a foundation or something you can call back to kind of, like, you know, feed your students into it, because you have that responsibility too. You have Instructor, you have your own goals because you're obviously continuing your study. Like, how did you juggle all that?
Well, like, on the core Aikido principles of blending and redirection of energy and circular movement, and those things are set forth by, like, Yamada Sensei, you know, Herb Fowl Sensei, Sugano Sensei, Henry Smith Sensei. So they set forth these principles that are natural and unchanging. But outside of that, on the branches, there's different hanging leaves and fruits. Smaller things, the details can change. But the principles have to remain the same.
Yeah, I've been to some places, and no discredit to anyone, that are a little more strict on what they offer. But I just think it's beautiful how we had so much room to be creative with our training. Like, almost like we were encouraged to, like, go make your Aikido. I'll call back something Wade Sensei said to me after I took my 4th Dan test. That was weird. It was funny. I'll tell you later. I was like, what do I do now? He was like, go make Aikido. I was like, what? He's like, no, it should be you. The whole point of the 4th Dan test, that random weird occurrence, was to show what someone's Aikido could look like in that gap, that little twilight period after 3rd Dan, because that's your last presentation. And the rest is, like, if you go to seminars and you're part of, like, the thing and you want to be visible, you either take a new Ukemi, you're out there rubbing shoulders with folks, you know. Like, you can go to the seminars and be visible, but there's, like, a different sort of path for folks that I was kind of on, and I was always kind of trying to figure out how that worked. But for you being an instructor, like, and doing it, like, you know, at a pretty high level, that's, like, a totally different thing. And my question for you now, which you kind of asked her a little bit, like, how do you gauge your personal study? Like, how do you find time for your personal study and your offerings for your students? Because essentially your role, if you agree with me, is to make people better at Aikido, right? To give them skills and, help them progress in, the best way they can so they can actually, go further and hopefully beyond you if they have goals to do so.
There's a couple of, both Henry Smith and Irv Fowl Sensei believe that you vigorously train in those classes. So as you're teaching, you got to make time to show examples and to work out with your students actively to keep yourself sharp in those classes.
Right.
I think it's better if you have like a lot of black belts and people that are over third, second Q, so that you can actually work and keep yourself sharp.
You have folks that can kind of keep, I don't want to say keep your training honest, but keep it active.
Keep it active. I think the more difficult times have been the times where there are a lot of new students, and you've got to keep a fresh crop safe. And so you're constantly watching to make sure they're safe, and so there's not enough time for you to keep yourself sharp. So you have to do something to the side, go to seminars, practice at home. Yeah. And also, like, when it comes to your students, you have to commit to getting them as far as you can. Right. So if you're a fifth Q, then you can take them probably. If you're fifth dan, you can probably take them to fifth dan. Yeah. But if someone is trying to go beyond that, then it's time to go to New York, go to seminars, go see different teachers.
They have to get integrated. There's probably a better term, but they have to start their exploration beyond their core, their base, right?
Right. Now you get to the point where if you're a musician, you have to find your own sound.
I like that.
If you're a rapper or a singer, you have to find your own voice.
Yeah.
Because it begins to, even with the testing goes from calling out techniques and call a response, and your teacher told you to do a technique, you have to perform it exactly the way he showed you, to do 5 things, a freestyle, a semi-freestyle. What do you do, and what do you do well, and show me, right? Your presentation becomes more, especially when we talk about a black belt, it starts to be like, okay, what is your presentation? What do you have to say? Right?
I like that.
What do you have to say? Before, in those, the 5th Q, 4th Q, all those lesser ranks, it's just about imitation.
Right.
You imitate these 5 techniques well, you pass.
Right.
Imitate these 6 techniques well, you pass.
You know what the shapes of, I'll use the term kata, and I think this will tie in a little more later. Because it's essentially kata at that point, like you're following steps, and then that becomes a little sharper. Because I imagine it like doing woodwork, right? You got this block. I probably still look like a block, but whatever. And as you start working to it, it starts to turn into a shape. It starts to turn into this beautiful whatever you're making, right? And it's smoother, and the edges sort of have like details to them. But then after that piece of your training in your school, like the rest of what becomes of that thing you've created is all like your personal journey. I want to ask you a further question you kind of touched on. Seminars have always been like a thing, and I see gym hopping, but cross training at another school, another dojo, another place, those have always been like the best ways for me to get more exposure. I know you mentioned seminars, because I think that's more of a thing. Was that the same for you? Do you think the seminars maybe did it for the extra exposure, not so much bouncing to dojo? Because we're kind of limited where we are, especially now. It's kind of
I think time. It's also like it depends a lot what city you're in. Like if you're in New York, there's a lot of beautiful Aikido all around. You can just hop within one city. You can cover 10 different dojos within the Metro New York, 10, 15 different dojos.
And then the surrounding New Jersey stuff you can get to,
for me, I think that the summer camp has always been great because the teachers come to one place.
USAF summer camp.
USAF summer camp. That's right. So within a day, you got what 6, 7 classes. Yeah,
if you get up at 6:45, you can start your day, man.
So you and that's 6 or 7 different great teachers, and so you don't necessarily get to have that where you're in. If you train for 3 days, you could potentially train with 21 different teachers, and if you go for a whole week, you're talking about.
That's like someone's dream year of Aikido if they could go to as many seminars as possible, like once a month. you do a different seminar. You think about that. You got 12 months in a year, once a month you do one. But then the variety, like you say, in the same place, like that density in that week or a few days, however you go, or even just one day of training, you get a lot thrown at you.
Get a lot, but then it gets to the same two principles, like of being orthodox and unorthodox, and like you see how principles are going to go through those same Aikido principles are going to go through all those teachers,
right.
But then they're completely different. You know, it's not a hypocrisy to have the same principle movement and follow the same principles, but then look and feel totally different.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that too, because there's a part of me that thinks, I mean, obviously this is at that level. We're talking about like the Shido and the Shihan, like, you know, our instructors, right? Mm-hmm. At that level, they spent so much time working on their craft. But I think we kind of forget like where they came from, but what they're offering. Like I'll use Osawa as an example. People can say like, oh, he teaches the same techniques, but like even if he teaches the same Arima Nage, you see him once a year, there's always another detail. There's always another flair, and it is uniquely him. You look at, I guess who else is around as a figurehead? You say you look at like Vu or someone like that. I'm just going down like the line of folks you can see. Totally different ends of the spectrum, right? Kanai Sensei, sort of student, trained in Chicago. Totally different branch of Aikido. But if you look at his flair when he teaches, or like Sharon Dominguez or someone like that, right? Or Claude, for that matter, who had the Kanai time and etc. All very different, like you say, but like if you go down to core Aikido principle, they're all speaking the same language, right? They put a little different swoop on their eye, or they cross their T a little differently, but like it's still the same sort of conversation. It's just interesting how they express it at that level, I think.
Yeah.
Man, so, all right, so we covered that stuff. So what's next for you, right? Because you're in, I mean, obviously you're in a role, you're a figurehead, you have a beautiful dojo, your students are always a pleasure. When I didn't get to train today, but when I come in here, I always enjoy watching them. Like, what's next for you? Like, what are your aspirations, right? Obviously, keep this beautiful space going, carrying on the art, but like, you know, you got new prospects, you got black belts, your new crop coming up. Like,
I think
what's happening?
that, you know, I think that's the thing. Like, at a certain point, it's about creation of people who can take the next step forward and take the Aikido into the next generation of black belts. And so that's training and keeping yourself sharp, that's teaching, but also bringing people along, making sure that people go to seminar and
get that exposure, that integration we talked about, right?
Get that exposure. Yeah. It's because at a certain point you will have to find your own way. Right, the teacher, the senseis keep these basic principles and these basic standards of movement, but you know, if you keep training, then you're going to have to find your own kind of voice, the own kind of way of moving, way of understanding it.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see this now, especially since I'm like not kind of removed from the space, but also still sort of active. Like I went to summer camp this year for a day. I didn't train just because of scheduling, but I went because I knew I'd see everyone, which was phenomenal. But it was just a different lens I looked at things from. Kind of like when I came here today, I just watched how like Aikido has changed, like how summer camp changed last time I went before the pandemic versus now. I mean, unfortunately, we lost some people. You know, we lost Dom Wait Sensei. Unfortunately, we lost Yamada Sensei. Some of the shifts and moves that happen in situations like that. Like a lot of those folks we looked up to are gone, and it's just interesting to see like, well, okay, like what's next? So understanding that for you, what do you think is next for Aikido? Because it's evolved, and I'll ask that question. Like, what do you think is next? Like, what would you like to see in Aikido? From an instructor's lens on how it could progress into the future, right? Because pretty soon it's going to be you, right? You keep looking at that line, you know, Harvey Sensei is getting older, you know, Peter and Benath and all that, and Claude. They all probably have successors, right? And you see things like Vu taking over and becoming part of the technical committee, right? So you see them making shifts and plans for the future. But for you, what do you think you'd like to see, and what does that landscape look like for you as Aikido evolves, like kind of for the future?
Well, I mean, it's also, as much as it's about your own kind of development, it's also about paying back and making sure that the love and to get togetherness and devotion that your teacher put into you, that you're paying that back even though they're not there, by putting that into somebody else.
Right.
And that's principle and standard, holding the principles, holding the standard, making sure that the standards of movement of Aikido in general and your school particular are still being kept.
Right.
But then also making sure that people understand that they can find their own particular way. Like Aikido can be something unique for you. It can feed you individually.
Right.
Right. And so, and that's it. Just holding standard and making sure that this place is still here. We're still training. People still. Henry really believed in like a lot of camaraderie.
He did.
And that this place is a place where people can come and grow together. I've seen people's kids born. I've seen people's kids go to college.
Yeah.
I've seen people. I met you. You were a teenager.
I was like 15, dude.
You were a teenager, and now you're a married man with a
kid.
child.
Yeah.
So like it's a place where it's a part of people's lives, and they keep growing in it, and it's here for them.
Right.
So that's the thing. I just want this place to continue to be there for people so that they can kind of integrate it in their lives, because Aikido in some people's lives have been a very stable part of their life, very stable. It's outside of relationships, changes in jobs, all kind of
all
things.
The normal life.
It remains the same.
Tide and oceans of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another piece to that I want to kind of dive into. So, especially because, like I said, we know Aikido is like a very unique thing. What I always fall back to and like to hear, and I've had my own experience in this in my cross training across different disciplines, but the one thing Aikido really, really kind of drills into you is like, I guess I would say, and correct me people on this, the American interpretation of like Budo, the warrior's way, or let's just say the path, because that's the most unique term that we don't have to go back and forth on. That path of Aikido, like we've read the books, read Aikido Dynamic Spirit and all that. We have all the knowledge. We've talked to our instructors about it. How do you describe walking that path? Because it's different for everyone. I think you touched on it a little bit, right? Like that integration, that consistent life pursuit, right? Because we may come to the martial art for like self-defense like I did when I was a kid, or an activity or something like that. But what keeps you in and keeps you going when you're off the mat and drives you, and how those skills carry off the mat, that to me, in my interpretation, that's the path, right? Like integrating those pieces into your life that Henry Sensei kind of really drilled into us when we started. So what's your take on that? Like if you had to kind of sum up like what that path of Aikido has done or means to you, how would you sort of describe that? That's a really loaded question. So
I think it's about first figuring out who you are, and also what is Aikido, and then once you figure out that, then you have a love and appreciation for it, and a devotion to the pursuit of something, right?
Right.
And so once I fall in love, then I want to talk about and experience this whole thing that I'm in love with.
Right.
I want to do it. I want to grow in it. And so and I've always been in love with the art since I started.
Yeah.
And so and then you surround yourself with like-minded people who love the art too. And so whether that's Aikido or MMA or Jiu-Jitsu or whatever,
there's something. Competition Frisbee, I always use that example, right?
You found a tribe of people who love the same thing.
Right.
And now within that tribe you can grow.
Right.
But then also when you're given certain understandings and you give somebody spending their time away from their family with you over years and decades, and then those people leave, you also have the same obligation, or you feel the same kind of obligation to do that for somebody else. And now it's your turn. Right. It's your turn to give.
Right.
And so it's not about like, okay, I'll never ever be Henry Smith Sensei, or I'll never be as good as Yamada or Urafao Sensei or Sagano. So it's not about that. It's like they spent time with you, and they gave you the best they had while they were here, and now you're still doing it. You know, and you have an obligation to try to do that with somebody else.
Paying it forward, man.
Paying it forward.
I love that. Dude, this is awesome. By the way, I love that we had time to sit down and do this. We kind of glazed over this, but a little more specifically, and you're actually a good person to ask just because of how things have changed over the years, your role. How would you describe how Aikido has changed from when you started versus now, right? Because you remember some of those summer camps like in 2000, single digit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the just the traditional martial arts and the explosion of MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and coming out of the 80s where, you have a lot of those Steven Seagal movies.
Yeah,
and so you had a mass of Aikido. It's like in the early 90s.
Right.
And so now you're just trying to find this new way, within the competition of all these other, because it's not just Aikido, it's also yoga, it's Pilates,
we're in an age of activity and the information age where you can just get on your phone and find it.
You can find it. You can find it. So it's surviving in a world where there's a lot more competition for like people's disposable dollars, and there's a lot more access to different martial arts all over the world.
Right. And also, tell me if you had the same experience. I've always, I talked to Bruce Bookman about this, Bruce Bookman Sensei. I feel like Aikido is very difficult to describe. I have a set of examples I use. Everyone doesn't agree with them, but I'll share. So if someone asks me about Aikido, traditional martial art, there's a lot of dynamic movement, and there's a lot of learning at the beginning, like choreography and understanding principles based upon concepts, as most martial arts do. What sort of separates it is there's less aspects on the sports and competition and more on growth within those principles and personal development, right? That's how I describe it. We're in an age now where, because of how the sports aspect kind of like is sort of king right now, it's a lot easier to just say, oh, go look at this champion in the sports thing, because you can show a medal, you can show what may be a return on investment for some people, but it just seems more appealing because it's so mainstream. Whereas I have always looked at Aikido as been more like, not like members only, but word of mouth.
Okay.
Most people who have come to Aikido that I've experienced, just for me, is someone told them about it. Because late stage, it wasn't Steven Seagal. Someone said, oh, I was in the dance or did this, and they told me. What was your experience with that?
I think, like I said, I grew up playing football, so that was highly competitive, and I ran track too.
Right.
Then I played football in college too. But it's competitive, right? And so Aikido is non-competitive.
Right.
And so the idea of, okay, you engage in something for 60 minutes and there's an absolute winner, right? Or I absolutely get to stand over you and dominate you. Absolutely. Right. I get to look into your eye and know that I'm better at this moment than you, and we acknowledge and we share that moment. And you have to accept that either I didn't, and I have to look up and say, hey, look, you got me. Right. Or you have to look at me and say, hey, look, you are better in this moment. But Aikido doesn't do that. It's total cooperation. Right. And so, and those roles will naturally shift. They will naturally shift. And so you have to accept that. You have to accept that it's my turn. Yeah. It's my turn. And so you don't have to do that in boxing. You don't have to do that in other arts. You don't have to cooperate in that way.
Right, outside of drilling, because even the drilling aspect, the end, because of that, again, it's the sports side, that's the best way I can describe it, has that element. Yeah. I like the way you put that, because I try to think of it the same way, whereas I feel like Aikido is a collaborative and creative environment. And the way you describe the roles of uke and nage, like the burglar and the non-burglar sword, whereas if I'm throwing that 4 times, you're giving yourself to this drill, this practice. We're creating something. We're building a conversation, this language we're speaking, right? And the uke's role, and et cetera, like that.
Right, but it's the most natural way of learning, because the natural way the animals learn is by playing games, And so if you got, predatory animals, they do stalking games. Right. Animals who are prey, they do dodging games.
Yeah, they're trying to avoid the...
Right, so where Aikido is special is that you take on both the roles, right? And you change off, right? And so it's just like, a lot of places now are doing very light sparring that almost borders on playing.
I kind of looked at there's some interesting examples of that. We can talk about that after. There's some interesting examples. I think some people are doing it well. And I think that comes to like the evolution, because like, again, we're in an age where people want that. They want to feel like they have something useful. Now, I'll be honest, at my age, I have no interest in wondering if my jiu-jitsu will survive in a bar I do competitions for that, but that's a totally different focus.
Right.
But I think the Aikido that I've done for so long, which is still in me, I'm still, sort of a part of it, like, that made it a lot easier. Because I homeschooled, I didn't have like a sports environment. My physical education for high school was Aikido. Right. So that was my physical activity.
Right.
Like I played street hockey and stuff. I was never on a league, but I had like consistent things. But I never had, like, you had the experience of like team-based sports. Right. Whereas I think in some other activities, it's individual. Mm-hmm. But Aikido, I think, wheels in that whole, like, no, it's a togetherness, it's a group, it's a thing. Even like Aikikai, I think means group in Japanese, right? So it's all encompassed in this thing that we're on this path together. We have our different ways of doing it. Obviously, we're humans. We'll bump heads with each other. But when we're on the mats, when we're off the mats, at dinner, at camp, or whatever, we're all going in the same direction, even if we branch off to this or do that. Like, we all have the same vision. It's just things happen and people decide, which way they're going to take it, I think, as we start talking about branches and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's a very, from top to bottom, it's a very supportive group of people.
I agree. Yeah. Man, this is great. All right, so this is the question I like to ask, and the other interviews, I did this with Nan, I did this with Bruce Bookman Sensei, but I want to ask you this. What advice do you have for anyone who's starting Aikido or early on, like, anywhere between beginning and not quite a shodan? What advice do you have for them to help them navigate the speed bumps of training, right? Because we've had some moments, right? We've all had them. So what advice would you give to anyone?
I would say consistent training. And so that means that if, you need to train weekly, but just be consistent. And also train with the black belts and higher rank of students. Don't be afraid to go to seminars. And don't be afraid to pick up weapons.
We're going to have to do another podcast and talk about that, because another thing I want to squeeze in, but I know we're almost on time, is I'll just kind of squeeze this out and we can come back to it. Well, I like the reference of saying that, a martial art like Aikido is like a conversation, having a conversation. What I see, and this is an ukemi thing, coming from a ukemi guy's point of view, what I see, some people do it well and some people don't. I feel like what changed for me is the ukemi being more of a lost art, because I feel like in some places, it's not everywhere, the ukemi is kind of like a separate part of the conversation, and some instructors don't, or maybe some students, I shouldn't say instructors, don't see the connection between the ukemi being part of the conversation, right? They see it as like I can do the falls on my own, but the challenge of, showing that knowledge or getting them to understand how they're connected together. Because I think for some ukemi people, when they're starting, they just want to do the big flip fall, the demo wheel action stuff, right? Yeah. And it's hard for them to tie that back in to what has that conversation and makes Aikido so beautiful. Because we see it, right. It wheels us in, but like even for me, it's always been a challenge to try to put those things together.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, the big, beautiful falls and break falls, that's one thing. But I would also include ukemi with a lot of things that are getting off the line and head movement and making sure that you're responding to what your partner's doing. Right, so it's a response. Your response, right? Don't just stay there and get hit. How are you responding by moving off the line and getting off the line and not getting hit? The kind of the end of the response is like, how do you accept the ground? And it's like, that's okay. That's like what most people think about, is this beautiful accepting of the ground and being so soft when you hit. But it's also about getting off the line.
Like, how do you get to that? To the end of the conversation?
How do you get to the end of the conversation? Well, you got to get off the line. Don't get hit.
Right.
The hand comes to your face, you got to move. Right? You got to respond in a way that's honest.
Yeah.
It can be beautiful too, but it's got to be honest. You got to move.
Right. And I saw you, and I know we're getting close here, I like the way you were showing that in the randori portion at the end of class, because I saw the demos, you showed it first, you explained it, and then you did the full run, and then as your students were going through, you kind of gave them time, and you were kind of walking through those concepts. So I think that's a good example of that actually being visible and explained. But it took me a long time. Like, as nice as ukemi was for me, as much as I spent a lot of time, the reason I was out there at seminars trying to be in the front so much was that it was very hard for me to learn Aikido just watching, because I think Aikido is something you have to feel.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you can describe it, you can see it, but like when you feel it, you can go, oh. and like, I'm not gonna pretend I understand it all, but like, taking the ukemi actually helped me a lot feel like, okay, this is what I think they mean. I know by moving this way, when I take the fall, it's safer, I'm closer, blah. So that's why they're moving their arm this way, or this is why, blah. So then my reverse challenge was trying to figure out, while I was teaching, how to be an ukemi guy who's teaching like both sides, the other side, like how to be nage, how to do, you know, posture and all that, and technique and things like that. Dude, this is awesome. I know we're out of time. Anything you want to share? I'll put up how do people find you. We're at the beautiful Aikikai of Philadelphia. Okay. I'll put the links up. Anything you want to share, anything like that? I'll put the links to the website or...
No, just, you know, keep training, you know, just show your devotion to your art and be disciplined, and, you know, all things will just keep happening and it'll come together.
Hard work, people. Hard work does pay off.
Hard work pays off.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure, big bro. Always good to see you. And everyone, we'll do this again. Thank you for watching the Aikicast.